So, let me lead this recording with... Hold it! So, I'm not gonna lie. When I first saw this director's take announced, and I saw the title of it, I definitely got a lot more excited. More excited than I've been for the game this entire time. And quite frankly, I've been quite dissatisfied with Overwatch content to the point where I was like, I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want to cover it. I don't even want to cover balance changes. And I enjoyed doing that because I enjoyed seeing what they were balancing, and it was just inevitably a cluster of like bad balance changes. Now, anybody who's been following me for a while, Sage, you're here with me, and I see that you're laughing, so obviously you found that joke funny, but I fully stand behind this. If you have been watching my channel for a while and have been keeping up with my Overwatch videos, you will see, heck, even if you're following me on the streams, whenever I was talking about Overwatch on a 5v5 versus 6v6 debate, or just even inputting my opinion about 5v5 versus 6v6, you will know I said 6v6 is not a matter of if. It is going to come back. It is not a matter of if, only when. And then my call, which, by the way, you can date this too, at the beginning of the year, when they announced that Bobby Kotick, in fact, you can go back to that video, and I probably say it in that very same one, if not the same time frame, like maybe a video later on in the month. Either way, you can find the video when Bobby Kotick goes down, and he's stepping down as CEO of Blizzard. You will see it in my video that I said, give it 6 to 8 months, and a major announcement will be made. Most likely, that's going to shift it, whether it's 6v6 or whatever. Most likely, it's going to be 6v6, because that was the most successful iteration of the game. So, with that being said, 6 to 8 months passed. The 6-month mark didn't do anything in July. I think that they made the announcement that they would cover it, and then come 2 months later, they started talking about it even more. Now we're back to 6v6, and it's finally here. Now, I've watched Flats and I've watched Saimito, so I'm going to input my own opinion here and just read it verbatim for you guys. So let's put that over to the side here real quick, and I can read. Welcome back to another Director's Take. Back in July, we opened the conversation around 6v6 and 5v5, and we're now, we'd like to continue that conversation, as well as share a few updates coming to Season 13 and 14. Season 13 is currently here, so we don't even need to talk about that. But I am not interested in anything 5v5. I am only interested in everything 6v6. And this is where my opinions are going to come in. But yes, in July they opened it up. One of the big problems is that they weren't addressing it. So this is big. Like I said, called it. Previously we talked about the different format changes throughout Overwatch's history, why we switched to 5v5, all of it bullshit by the way, and where we plan to go from here. Included in those next steps, we said we're looking to running a series of tests to try out different core team composition formats in Overwatch 2. They did. They all announced that. But I would also like to say that a lot of people are not covering one of the big changes to 5v5 that were highly unnecessary to going to that format. One of them was to stop making damage heroes and just focus on making tanks and supports so that the roles would naturally balance, because there's a myriad more damage heroes. Then there was double than the tanks, and the tanks have built up since then, and definitely doubled the damage heroes than even the supports. And if you would just focus on building those two roles, you would solve your problem. But instead, they started making more damage heroes because it's like, oh, well, more damage. Dude, stop making damage heroes. They're already like more damage heroes per capita than tanks and supports. If you just balance it out, the role would naturally fix itself. And you wouldn't have queue issues with tanks because there would be more options and more interesting compositions that you can make instead of like the usual 6. It's just basic knowledge. So I'll move on real quick. These format tests are all about understanding if we can make the core game mode even stronger. Yeah, right. Every day, millions of players. Millions. Right, sure. Jump into the core 5v5 format, and last thing we want is to negatively impact that experience. Hasn't stopped you before. The exciting thing about these tests is the potential to introduce something that could appeal to another group of players, ones that might have felt uncertain about the move to 5v5. Literally everybody. Literally everybody. When Overwatch 2 launched. Tell me that's just her coughing.
I don't.
Here we go. If you didn't read the previous director's take, I'll skip past this. We all did. And if you didn't, just go there. Honestly. Upcoming 6v6 test in Season 14. Now, as I mentioned, I just watched Flats and Saimito's video about this, and Flats did bring up a good point about the Season 14 test. It'll make sense when we get there, but essentially they need to flip it, because it's kind of unfair of a testing ground, and it'll make sense when we read past it. But they want to introduce 2 iterations of 5v5 and 2 iterations of 6v6, starting with 5v5 in this current season. Season 14 will be for 6v6, making their 2 separate game modes. And they're starting with the worst iteration first for 6v6, and then bringing the more normalized one that older players would be familiar with and would actually be the core experience before Overwatch 1 flipped to Overwatch 2. You'll see what I mean. The team has been exploring our vision and development for these tests, and we're happy to announce we'll be running 2 different 6v6 tests in Season 14. The first, and this is again the worst iteration that they could start with, launching the week into the season, we will look a little different than the standard 2-2-2, which is, by the way, the standard, from Overwatch. Part of this series of tests is not only to judge our players' appetite for larger team sizes, but for us to explore different ways that might implement a change without running into the same problems we had previously. That sounds like a second test thing in general. That does not sound like a first test thing, and I don't know. With that in mind, no water. That in mind, our first test will be a variation of open queue, which we'll be internally referring to as min 1, max 3. Each team of 6 must have at least 1 of each role and no more than 3. I know that I misunderstood this the first time I read it, with a quick brief overreading, but basically that means that there's no GOATS composition, there's no 3 tanks, 3 supports, it's not open queue to the extent where you could run the 3-3. You need to run either 2-2-2, or you need to run a variation of 1-2-3, or 3-2-1, or 2-1-3, or 2-3-1, whatever. You just need to run a variation. There are a few different combinations here that you'll be able to try, but this opens up many different team compositions that we haven't seen before in Overwatch 2, or just Overwatch in general. Exactly. Yeah, that's the variation, one of the example variations. Running a 3-2-1. Where was I? Different team compositions. You'll be able to switch roles on the fly during a match as long as that switch doesn't break the minimum of 1 or the maximum of 3. So if you already have 3 supports and you swap off the 1 tank to go to DPS, it won't let you. No, I like that. That's actually a good thing to experiment with, but not before you introduce the core game mode. Again, Flats covered this a little bit more in detail. It would be nice to actually do it the other way around, to give it a proper chance to actually format in the way that would most likely format if they decided to go with this mode. But that's not what they're doing. Besides experimenting with the format, that could be seen as a middle ground to role queue and open queue, which, by the way, I do like the concept. I should quickly stress that. This will also give us a look into how Overwatch 2 heroes, abilities, updates work in a 6v6 environment before we expand to other types of tests. Also good. I like that purpose. The second test during Season 14 mid-cycle, so midway through, will be the classic 2-2-2, but it will incorporate some new principles we introduced with Overwatch 2. So in other words, they're re-implementing 6v6 2-2-2 from Overwatch 1, but in Overwatch 2 environment. So in other words, they're like McCree's Flashbang's not coming back, Briggs' Shield Bash stun is not coming back, the hero reworks they already put in. Like, that was kind of obvious, but I guess they needed to put that out there in case there was some confusion. Makes no sense to me. My congestion's killing me. The 6v6 tests will have their own card in unranked alongside other modes, and they will not take the place of other modes of the same game types like seasonal events or quick play hacked. Also good, because quick play hacked was not the environment to do it, and I also know that people complained, apparently. Didn't really bother me none. We'll also be implementing a series of balance changes that will apply to these 2 test modes only. The power and survivability of tanks will go down in these 6v6 formats. That, again, was a no-brainer, but I think they needed to say it. And we'll be taking a look at whether or not we need many of the passives that we've added in Overwatch 2. I agree with Saimito when he made this take. Remove the overall passives for the roles, but make hero-specific passives a thing. So, for example, Soldier doesn't benefit from certain things that may benefit a Genji, or may benefit a Tracer, or may benefit a Widow. He can benefit from his own thing. Like maybe an increased sprint speed when he gets a kill or something. I don't know. Like an adrenaline rush. And then for Genji, he already has like his double jump, but you can probably introduce something a little bit more unique as well. All in all, overall role passives, maybe a universally general one like tanks receive less knockback compared to the other roles. Supports have maybe an increased rate of healing, or like something base and not wacky. But role passives need to be toned down heavily or go away. I would be okay with that. Are you okay?
No, I'm dying.
Yeah, the wife is dying. But yeah, I would say if they're doing the 6v6, just remove them. Or work around making them a lot less impactful. Upcoming modes in Season 13. I really don't personally care, but I would be doing a disservice if I didn't at least read it. We will be hosting 2 format 5v5 experiments in Season 13 that are also aimed at testing flexibility within this format, similar to the 6v6. Planning a quick play hack coming soon, which are calling Limit 2, which is basically the same thing they did with Limit 3, Min 1, Max 2. This will be 5v5 with the maximum number of each role being limited to 2. This includes tanks, but they will be tuned to open queue balance, meaning they have less health. And you can freely switch heroes and roles as long as the new role doesn't already have 2 players. So like the 6v6 limits test, they're trying to look at how the game in the current state works if players have more freedom with team compositions without making it full open queue. I like that. Now she's got me dying.
Sorry.
For the mid-cycle, we're planning a special game mode currently codenamed Kingmaker, and like Limit 2, the maximum number of each role is limited to 2. However, the player who is alone in their role gets a bonus. And they'll talk more about how the mode works in more detail closer to launch. But like Limit 2, we're exploring more freedom in 5v5 while enabling more types of compositions to succeed. And Quick Play Hacked, Limit 2, and Kingmaker will provide an excellent benchmark and framework for us going into the 6v6 tests. We're also looking forward to seeing the statistics we can gather as you dive into these modes alongside the feedback, which is one of our strongest data points. Kingmaker basically makes the 5v5 format that whoever's alone now gets the bonus, similar to how the tank is alone and already receives that bonus. Seems interesting, but I'm not interested in 5v5. I am done with 5v5, and I would care less if it was just burning in the boiler room of hell at this point. But, again, I had to do it a service of at least reading it. So this is interesting. A world with 5v5 and 6v6 at the same time is what they're implying. As we mentioned in our previous piece, we will be watching the reception and results of these tests closely. Another sentiment from that piece that I would like to reiterate is that Overwatch team wants to make the game that you want to play. So what does that mean for the future based on these experiments? In the world where a surge of players join this mode and continuously play it, then we will have the signal we need to do more with it. Think what that more is depends on the level of excitement. Is there a world where both 5v5 and 6v6 exist permanently in Overwatch 2? If you asked me a few months ago, I would have said no. As we've discussed Overwatch 2's future in light of making a game that our players want to play, we know our players can want more than one experience, and it would be something we'd need to consider moving forward. I'll quickly put this out there. If they put 6v6, I'm never touching 5v5. Even if they give me incentives, I would never touch 5v5 again with a 10-foot pole. Never. So if they do end up putting in both, congratulations, play the mode you want. I'll go to the one that I enjoy. Leave it at that. More to come closer to Season 14. The coming months are going to have a ton of excitement in Quick Play Hacked, Limit 2, and Kingmaker in Season 13. Yeah, excitement. That's the word I use. Multiple 6v6 tests in Season 14, and maybe another special surprise just around the corner.
Oh, Lord.
There's more? Talk about it, you jerk!
No more surprises.
No more surprises. Just be open with it at this point. You're playing just the tip with me.
Stop that.
I know. The team couldn't be more stoked. Couldn't be more stoked to share these updates with you. I wished you were less stoked about the 5v5 ones, but yeah.
Stoked.
You sound super stoked. And we'll be diving in alongside you. So I'll quickly address this before I finish. Listening to player feedback is usually just code lingo for we're going to listen to the top end players and maybe some of like the mid to lower end players. But we're primarily going to be looking at the top end players and talent for the best information and go by that. I am so sorry, dog. You okay? I scared the poor pup. The way that we take Overwatch to the next level is by centering all of you at the heart of what we create. Laughable. And the directions we take together. Because we don't have a choice. Your feedback and collaboration with our team will always be an essential part of the Overwatch development.
But will it?
Will it though? Will it be? Okay, I'm being a little too harsh. They have been listening a lot more than even the previous iteration of Team 4. I can't complain 100%, but I want to. So it makes it a little bit more fun.
So we will.
So we will. Stay tuned for more news and announcements in the weeks to come, and we'll have more information to share as 6v6 tests in Season 14 and Quick Play Hacked events closer to their launches. Let's not make a great game. How about that? Can we try that for an iteration? Alright, so that's the first Overwatch video I put out there, but again, I'm going to preface this by saying, called it! So, for all you naysayers out there, oh, they won't ever bring back 6v6.
They just did.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are down below. I'd love to have a little bit of fun just going back and forth, so show me in the comment sections.